the last video, we set up our um, we set up all of our main framework so that all we have to do is get into actual programming now. Um, we talked previously also about sockets and kind of our goals and what we're going to do. So what we're going to first work on today is our initialize method. That's this one right up here. And remember, if you remember from the last video, we said that this is going to run only once. It's going to be the first thing that runs, and it's going to set everything up for the rest of the program. And this parameter that we added, port, is going to be the port that we're going to bind our TCP socket to. All right, so let's go ahead and start coding. Now the first thing that we're going to write here is we need to set up an array that has everyone who is going to connect to, everyone's going to have to be added to it when they connect to the server, and then we can actually get data based on that. So because we're going to have multiple people in this, the way that we're going to do it is through an array that we'll call the descriptors array. So, and we want it to be a global variable, which means we want it accessed by everything within the class. And so how you define that is by putting an @ sign in front of the variable name. So as I said, we're going to call it descriptors, just like that. And we want it to be an array, so we can make this by doing array : new. Okay, so what that did is it just created, it said that the variable descriptors is going to be an array, which we just created. Another variable we're going to need is going to be server socket. And what this is going to do is it's going to be a variable that contains the socket address of our server and is going to actually create the server. So we'll name it server socket, and we'll set it equal to a TCP server dot new. So that's going to create a new TCP server. And we want it to be at localhost, which is default, so you can actually just leave it blank. And we're going to bind it to our port that we defined up here. Okay, and next we're going to say our server socket so this is going to be kind of a long line of code, and it's probably not going to make much sense. But basically what we're going to say with it is that we're just going to define some things about the socket. So we're going to define that it's an SOL socket, and we're going to use the reuse ADDR key so that we can open and close the socket much faster. So here, just follow along with the code. We're going to do server socket dot set sock opt, and it's going to be socket : SOL socket. We want socket SO underscore reuse ADDR and 1. Okay. Next, what we're going to say is now that we've created our socket, we just want to, for the server administrator, we want to give them, a little heads up that the server has been created. So we are just going to print out a message that says, and printf allows you to include a variable too, which I'll show you in a second. So we're going to say chat server started on port, and then %d, that's going to be the placeholder for our variable that we're going to insert, and %d just stands for a and so what we do is we'll create a new line afterwards, and now to replace it with the actual variable, the variable we want to do is port, so we just do that. And last thing we want to do is we want to push our server socket into the descriptors array. So we do @ descriptors dot push server socket. Okay, and that's all we need for this method. Um, let's see, you have about 5 more minutes, so let's go ahead and we'll move on to the run method, and we'll get part of the way through there. Okay, so in the run method, first thing that we want to do is we want to create a while loop, a never-ending loop, because we never want it to stop prompting you for input. So to do that, we just do while one. This is an infinite loop, and as I said before, whenever we have while loops, we also need to end them, just like we did for methods and classes. Next, what we want to do is we want to define a variable that's going to select the descriptors array and gather the data from it. So at descriptors, and then these are just some other functions, but we don't need any of them. Nil, nil, nil. So we'll do 3 nils, and that'll end that line off. And now we want to check if that res is equal to nil, which means that it doesn't, or check that it isn't equal to nil, so it does not equal nil. And what that means is that we are receiving data through it. If it's not nil, then we just want it to repeat around and check for data again. When it doesn't equal nil, that just means that no one's trying to connect or no one's trying to send data. No data is being received by the server. So if it doesn't, then. And conditionals, we always end with an end also. And so now what we want to do is, because we know it's receiving data, we want to iterate through all of the different entries. So we do for sock, and this is our variable that we're describing with the for loop, in res, and its array, so we call key 0. And so now this is going to iterate through everything. Again, it's a loop, so we need to end it with an end. And we want to say if that sock variable that we're iterating through is equal to the server sock, then what we want to do is accept the connection. And so how we're going to do this, what this means is that someone's trying to connect. If someone's trying to connect, we automatically want to accept it. So we send it over to that helper method, accept new connection, that we made right here. I'll go ahead and just copy and paste that. So that's all we have to do. But otherwise, that, then it means that either someone is disconnecting or someone is sending a message. And again, this is a conditional, so we always want to end it. In our else, now again, we're going to have to kind of nest a whole bunch of things here. So as I said, there are two options of what it could mean. The first is that someone is trying to disconnect. So to check for that, you want to check if the sock is at the end of the file. So that means that it's not receiving any more data and it's totally done with, which means that they have disconnected. Then what we want to do is we just want to send out a message. First, we want to delete them from the descriptors array, delete them from, close the socket, and just get rid of it altogether. But we also want to let everyone else know that they have disconnected. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and just create our string that we're going to send to everyone else first, and it's going to equal sprintf is the same as printf, and we're going to use two variables here, so that's why we were using printf. And we want to say just that client left, let's just say, and then we want to give their information, so we'll do %s. %s means that you're sending a string, and we want to create a new line afterwards. So we'll go ahead and end it, and the two variables that we're going to send it are going to be parts of this sock variable that we set here, and they're just going to be identifying things. So the first one is going to be the sock IP address. So to do that, we do sock.peer addr, and it's 2 in that array. And the next one is going to be their unique identifier. So that's sock.peer address, and that's 1. So that's all we have to do for there. Next, what we want to do is we want to send that string to everyone. So we do broadcast string, that other function we made down here, and we're going to send them this message, which was string, we said. But we don't want to send them that message, obviously, because they're leaving the server, so they won't even get it. So yeah, so obviously we don't want to send it to that person. So we include sock as our second parameter, and this is going to be the omit sock, so that's who we're not going to send it to. Then what we want to do is we just want to close everything out for them. So we do sock dot close, and then also we want to delete them from the descriptors array. So descriptors dot delete sock. Okay, and that's all we have to do for if they're trying to log out. So we'll go ahead and just set up this last little bit. We'll say else, and then because it's a conditional, we'll want to end it here. And in our next video, I'll go over what we're going to put in this um, else conditional, and also over our other functions. Thanks for watching.